So what is a closed question? So like I mentioned, a lot of these will be definitions. So we have closed questions and open questions. When you think closed, think of it having an ending, has a definite answer. So when it's closed, it would be what it says here. D, where the question has fixed choices for answers. And then you have your open question is more like a free response. So closed deals with fixed choices and open questions deal with free response. Advantages and disadvantages of them. So the advantage, which would be D, they are easier to analyze. So closed are easier to analyze, but they limit the responses. Whereas you have open questions, they allow the responses, they allow the respondents to say exactly how they feel, but are harder to analyze because of answers and possible misrepresentation of the answers. So that happens. So again, those are the pros and the cons. So now, the following survey has bias. Determine the type of bias, suggest a remedy. So to determine the public's opinion of the police department, the police chief obtains a cluster sample of 15 census tracts within his jurisdiction and samples all households in the randomly selected tracts. Uniformed police officers go door to door to conduct the survey. So what is this type of bias? So when looking at this, the type of bias that could happen, you're sending officers from door to door. What could happen is what you call a response bias. Because people might not open the door, or actually the way it works is if they open the door, because they're law enforcement, they might kind of tweak what they want to say because they might be fearful or anything like that. So they might not speak their real truth. And then what is a remedy, a possible remedy for this? If you look at this here, the best way to remedy this situation would be to conduct the polling without a police uniform. So they would get a more honest response if they weren't wearing a uniform, because then the person wouldn't be looking at them as a police officer, but as a person. Why is it rare for frames to be completely accurate? And this one here, it's rare for frames to be completely accurate, mainly because they're obtained periodically. So that means the populations are constantly changing. Okay, so it's not all the time, it's just periodically. There's a check-in to do this. So the populations are constantly changing, which means that you're not going to always have up-to-date accurate information. What are some solutions to non-response? So we have a few solutions that can happen. So you have here attempting a callback. That would be important. So when people don't answer you, when you're doing these surveys and different things, try calling them back. So you attempt to call back. And another thing is to offer rewards and incentives. And that's for non-response. Define the following items. So we want to make sure we can determine what an experimental unit is, a treatment, a response variable, factor, placebo, confounding. So by definition, define experimental unit. So an experimental unit deals with a person, object, or some other well-defined item. So this right here is very specific. An experimental unit deals with a person, object, or some other well-defined item for which the treatment is applied. Then we have the actual treatment. So define treatment. This right here could be any combination of values of factors. Okay, so any combination of the values of the factors, that is what a treatment is. So now your response variable deals with the qualitative or quantitative, and vice versa, variable for which the experimenter wishes to determine how its value is affected by the explanatory variable. So it could be qualitative or quantitative, vice versa. It's how they wish to deal or determine its value. So now we need to determine the factor. So when we determine the factor for this, the factor is a variable whose effect on the response variable is to be assessed by the experimenter. So it's the effect on the response. So the variable whose effect on the response is the one that's getting evaluated or assessed by the experimenter. Then you have what you call the placebo. The placebo is what you call that innocuous medication, such as, for example, you have sugar tablets, whatever it looks and tastes, all those things. So the experimental drug. And then you have what you call confounding. Is basically the effect of two factors that cannot be distinguished. So the effect that can't be distinguished. And then lastly, we want to explain the difference here. And I'll expand this. We want to explain the difference between a single blind and a double blind experiment. And what that deals with here is when you're doing single blind, the subject, the person being tested, does not know which treatment is being received. But in a double blind, neither the subject nor the researcher in contact with them knows the treatment that's being used. So single blind, the subject doesn't know the treatment. In double blind, the subject and the researcher have no idea what treatment is being received.